It's the strange case of the midnight footprints. Our story starts with Mia and Jay, a brother and sister duo who were obsessed with all things detective. They even had their own little club, complete with magnifying glasses and notebooks. They thought they were ready for any case that came their way, but they weren't prepared for a mystery that started right inside their own home. One Tuesday morning, Mia came downstairs, ready to grab some cereal, but she stopped dead in her tracks. There, on the clean kitchen floor, was a trail of muddy footprints. They were small, distinct, and led from the back door, through the kitchen, and toward the hallway. She called for Jay, her voice a mix of excitement and confusion. A real case. At last, Jay rushed down, his eyes wide. He pulled out his official detective notebook. Observation number 1, he declared. The front and back doors are locked from the inside. Mia checked them herself. He was right. Both deadbolts were firmly in place. So, how did someone get in? And more importantly, how did they get out without leaving a single trace of an exit? The footprints only went one way. It was as if a ghost had walked in, wandered around, and then vanished into thin air. Mia, the more detail-oriented of the two, got down on her hands and knees to examine the evidence. She followed the muddy trail. It looped around the kitchen table, paused near the cookie jar of detail. They both found suspicious sand, then headed toward the living room. Jay, meanwhile, was focused on the prints themselves. They're small, he noted, sketching one into his notebook. Way too small for a grown-up. Maybe it's a kid. Mia's investigation led her to the living room window that overlooked the backyard. The footprints stopped right in front of it. The window was locked, just like the doors. But as Mia squinted, she saw something else. On the windowsill, almost invisible, were a few tiny, crushed bits of green leaves. Jay, come, look at this. Say, Khalid. The leaves were from the big oak tree in their backyard, the one with branches that scraped against the house. But the window was shut tight. It didn't make sense. They were stumped. A locked house, a one-way trail of small, muddy footprints, and a few random leaves by a sealed window. They sat at the kitchen table, going over the clues. No forced entry. No adult-sized shoes. Just mud, leaves, and a phantom intruder. Was it a prank? They couldn't think of anyone who could pull this off. Suddenly, Jay snapped his fingers. "The dog door!" he exclaimed. They both ran to the small flap built into the back door. It was designed for Buster, their golden retriever, but it was definitely big enough for a small child to squeeze through. They peered outside. Sure enough, there were more muddy patches near the door, right under the big oak tree. The pieces were starting to fit together. Someone small had come in through the dog door. But who? And why? They didn't have to wait long for the answer. Just then, their Aunt Carol pulled into the driveway to drop off their younger cousin, Leo, for the day. Leo, a whirlwind of 5-year-old energy, came running in, and on his feet, a pair of very muddy sneakers. And in his hand, he was clutching Jay's favorite high-powered flashlight. Jay's eyes went from the muddy sneakers to the flashlight. "Leo," he asked slowly, "why do you have my flashlight?" Leo's face turned bright red. He explained that he and his friends were planning a nighttime camping adventure in his backyard last night, and he needed a really good light. He knew Jay had the best one. So, in the middle of the night, he'd snuck over, crawled through the dog door he'd seen Buster use a million times, grabbed the flashlight from the whole table, and crawled back out. The mystery was solved. The culprit wasn't a ghost or a master criminal, but their 5-year-old cousin on a secret mission. Mia and Jay couldn't help but laugh. They had solved their first real-life case. They wrote it all down in their notebook. The mystery of the midnight footprints. Case closed. And they made a mental note to maybe put a lock on the dog door. What a fun little mystery. Right? It just goes to show that sometimes the simplest explanation is the right one. Thanks for hanging out with me today. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you soon.